Okay, today what I'm doing is installing a proper string tree at the top here. Now with these, a lot of locking tuners are staggered so that they, you get the correct amount of pressure on some of the strings. And you can see that, I don't know if you can see that some of these strings are not getting enough pressure in the middle being pushed down. A lot of locking tuners like Spurzels, they stagger the height of these posts as wonderful for my custom guitar. As they go further away from the nut, they get lower so you don't need to use a string tree or like this here, where I've used the correct amount of spacers. You notice I have some super glue in my hand because the hole that was there was for a larger diameter screw, wood screw that was too large and ugly. So I'm just putting a little shot of super glue down in that hole, and I'm gonna let it just kind of set up. And this is like a gel super glue. I love this stuff, the Gorilla Glue. It's like a gel super glue, and it just it works well with wood and metal and anything else, and you can still back this screw out later. But I noticed that one spacer on that is going to push those strings down, so they're on such a sharp angle pushing down on that nut that it's going to bind even with the LSR roller nut, which is a ball bearing nut at the top of this, on the top of this Mofo American custom guitar. And I love this guitar. I always talk about it because it was made for me by Mike Feltz, luthier in Kentucky. And what I've done is I found another small spacer, and I'm adding the correct amount of spacers, but it doesn't leave me a whole lot of thread to work with there, but enough that it should bite with the addition of the super glue. So that's what I'm going to do, is I loosen these two strings to accommodate for this string tree to push down without any resistance. And I'm not gonna worry about actually where the strings are right now. I'm just gonna get the string tree in position, and then I'll push those strings under after. I'm just gonna get this aligned and locked down. So that's the main thing right now. And I normally have my workbench set up with my guitar rest that I built. I'm gonna grab the #1 screwdriver, Phillips head. So a small Phillips head. And these are just the Husky brand ones from Home Depot, and they work great. And just lock this thing into the right position. And there we go. It just grabbed nicely. I'm going to align it by hand, which is also, when I aligned it, went counterclockwise, so it loosened it a little bit. So I'm going to use a set of needle nose pliers and hold it in place as I tighten it. And then it should really set up and stay in place before I put any string tension on it and tune the guitar. And get this thing aligned properly while I tighten it clockwise so it doesn't turn with the screw, and set everything. And Graphtec is really the nicest string trees to use. I'm using a metal one here because it's black, it looks good, and it's gonna work good in this application. As you can see, it's clean looking, and now it's gonna stay in place really well with the addition of the glue. I'm gonna let that set up, and it's gonna form a nice strong bond. But when I push these strings, which I loosened purposefully, I'm going to back off the tension a little more so I'm not putting any pressure on that upward and pulling up on that screw I just tightened down. And just pop these strings under there and just back that off, that pressure off. And you got to think backwards on one side there, derp. There we go. And I'm going to just make sure that's aligned. And now I don't mind aligning it a little bit clockwise, because if anything, it's just tightening it a little bit more. So that's not going to hurt anything. So now the string tree is in perfect position. I'll let it set up, tune it, and play it, and it should intonate. The guitar was in perfect intonation with the old string tree, which was really clunky and ugly, and this one is a lot sleeker. But I'm going to put a little shot of just like some 3-in-1 oil, or even a little silicone underneath it, so it doesn't bind at all, so it just has a smooth, as you tune, there's no friction against metal. Not that it's going to move a lot, because I'm not using like a trem. It's got a hip shot bridge, it's a fixed bridge, so that should really help this have the perfect amount. The other ones are on a good angle, but now those center two strings are going to be pushed down enough, it's going to put enough pressure on them that the guitar will stay in tune better, intonate, and just it'll play correctly and sound right. So that's why a string tree, at least one, Fender often uses two, depending on the angle of the neck. Some guitars have a much more extreme. Let me grab a guitar with a really extreme, where you don't need a string tree necessarily, with something like this. Here's a 7-string I'm completely redoing for somebody. I got to drop some Duncans in it and finish setting it up. But this does have a, this has no need for a string tree, because you can see the angle, the headstock was cut from a block of maple on, that it has the right angle to keep those strings down in the right position, which is also a fixed bridge guitar. It doesn't even need a string tree. Where this guitar, look at how flat that is, where a string tree is definitely needed. So that's the point of having a string tree on a guitar. And a lot of people hate the way they look, and people with, it's not as important if you have a Floyd Rose, and they still will, you don't even, like this here has a slight, the EVH Kramer Beretta Special Edition or whatever. I call it the Blamer instead of the Kramer. And I really set this up my own way. This is a great guitar. I'll go into this in further detail. I have this really set up a special way, and it plays like butter. It's got an 11-degree radius. It is nice. Doesn't have stainless steel frets like the Mofo American does, but it's a great guitar. This guitar here, no need for a string tree. Again, you got a nice angle on there on this Fernandez. This was that Kenny, I can't remember his last name, the guy from Typo Negative play. This is one of the American Fernandez guitars. It's not one of their cheap ones. You got to be careful with Fernandez. They have some that look like it, like the Tomcat or whatever, which is a really cheap basswood clunker. And that one, though, you can feel the heavy alder body. And strangely, the Kramer's a maple body. The Dean is basswood. That's just a cheap guitar, but it does sound good for a 7-string, especially when I put those Duncan, the white Duncan passive 7-string, I forget which Duncan Distortion 7-string pickups in. And that's going to be a nice guitar for just kind of that gent sound. You know, you can tune it down really low, run heavy strings, tune it down to God knows what, E, I don't know, anything even lower, who knows, Just depends on what he wants to run on there. I think I got like 72. I took an 8-string set and just ditched the high string and put a set of 8-string heavy wound Ernie balls on there. So he wants that to be super low tuned for that, like, you know, Thy Art Is Murder or Acacia Strain or whoever, I don't know, there's a million bands that tune down to these ultra low tunings. So that's a long-winded video about string trees and why they're important, but it's really important for intonation. As you go down the fretboard, intonation, when I go through this chord tuner, you know, I want to see green on every note I hit, no matter where it is on the fretboard. And that's crucial, and I'll get more into intonation in another video. But that's it for right now, and have an awesome day, guys. Thanks.